Talking in more broad terms, but as we always do when we talk about Liverpool, we should focus on their attack, particularly because it's coming up across against a defence that will be very well organised under Rafa Benitez, their former manager. It's 103 goals from 40 games for Liverpool this season.
It's incredible, and they lost perhaps their best player halfway through the season in Coutinho, but they're not missing him that much. I think this could be a game actually where they might miss that bit of ingenuity from midfield, because I'm not sure Newcastle will be as deep as we saw them against Manchester City a couple of weeks ago, but they will be quite reactive, and they will say to Liverpool, we know that you're best on the counter-attack, we know that you're best if you have space, if you can run behind the defence. We're not going to give you that space. Here, you take the ball and see what you can do with it. And that's where Liverpool, with their centre midfielders who are all kind of quite sturdy and more sort of number sixes rather than number 10s, might have a hard time. And then it comes down to beating your man on the side and maybe that kind of stuff. And Chan, being good. So I can understand. I think Jurgen is not being disingenuous when he's saying, this could be quite an awkward kind of game because of the way those teams match up.
Set up, yeah, absolutely.
In terms of what Liverpool are hoping to achieve this season, would second be a good finish for them if you'd set it up at the start of the season?
I think top four would be really good for Liverpool because it's still progress. Obviously, if you could get third, second, it's even better, and then the expectations get higher. But I feel that once Liverpool do finish in the top four, which I think they will, and then once they address the goalkeeper situation, I still feel that they do need it. What's it, Keita? Once he gets here, someone like this, I still think that someone like Coutinho would be, if you can't keep hold of him, but
a playmaker of some sort.
I think that a goalkeeper, a playmaker of some sort, and then all of a sudden, I think Liverpool are right amongst it with Manchester City because they've got everything. They've got everything to be a real challenger to
including
Manchester
a no-look
City.
finisher.
A no-look finisher like Firmino.
That's going to go wrong at some stage, isn't it?
I feel that what's got to happen as well, Raf, is that in respect of Klopp, they're talking about how difficult this could be because Newcastle probably will be deep. They may not be as deep as they were against Man, but they have to have the patience to try and break that down and find another way.
As far as Liverpool's progression towards the end of the season is concerned, is Klopp showing the benefit of having had a couple of seasons in the Premier League now in terms of how to manage his squad? They had a dip in January last time around. It looked as though they got over that hump, and they seem to be coming with reasonably fresh legs into this late stage of the season.
Yeah, I think a lot of things have come together. They've had fewer injuries, which has allowed them to rotate more, which has led to fewer injuries. They had this real problem in the first season where everyone was out all the time and he couldn't play anyone else, so people kept getting injured. I think there's a lot of work has gone into nutrition, into the training regime, not necessarily changing things, but just trying to improve, learn from your mistakes. They've already had two big sort of breaks, in the sun, trying to recharge your batteries. And I think also the playing system has changed a little bit. They're not this 100% pressing all the time machine. They pick their spots, they wait a little bit, sometimes they stay a little bit deep, sometimes even play on the counter-attack. I remember going to see a game away to West Ham where they played very deep and just waited for West Ham to lose the ball and bing, bang, bang, dang. And they killed them on the break without expending a lot of energy. So I think it's just a case of a manager learning to use his resources well, learning to cope with the specific demands of the Premier League and getting the breaks, getting better at getting the breaks when it comes to keeping everyone healthy and fit, and that is a unique position to be in the beginning of March.
He talked about that patience a lot last season, that the players just needed to wait for the right opportunity rather than constantly going away at opposition teams. In terms of the injury list and managing to keep everybody fit, as Rafa's saying, it's the opposite of a vicious circle, a virtuous circle, if you like, that they have enough players fit that they're able to rotate, which enables them to keep. Is that a feature of successful Premier League sides, that they are able to cope with the demands and that their coaching is of a style that allows other players to slot in easily.
Well, yeah, it does, and the players, like I have to mention, like the Ox now, he looks revitalised. He looks like somebody who's ready to go. I agree with Raf there about the way that they're picking their moments now to pick a team off. They're waiting for them to come forward, and then they're going in, and that for me, especially if you're training like that and you're looking for those moments, it's even more efficient. And when the people are coming in and out, they know exactly what they're doing when they come in, and they're just looking more oiled. I think the big test is when they do get a Newcastle who come to Anfield and they stay deep, is how they break that down. Everything else you feel Liverpool are ready to go with, but that is where they've got to show the patience that they used to do back in the 70s and 80s.
And Raf, every week we sit here and we talk about teams needing consistency in their team selection. Central defensive pairings like to be put together if it's a three.
I don't believe in that.
Liverpool are accountable. Liverpool are sort of counter evidence to all of that. They've made more changes than anyone else. So how do you do it? How do you make the changes successfully?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to have a system that works and people understand what they're supposed to do, and it doesn't make a difference. One guy comes in and he knows his position. Yes, it's nice to have partnerships, to have sort of understandings and stuff, but if you're involved, as Liverpool are, in all competitions and you're trying to win some of them and you're still in the Champions League, I think it's not realistic to say I'm going to have my best 10 or my best 12 and they're going to play every year. Going back to Chelsea, I think that's one of the problems that Conte's had. He played the same team throughout last year, no European football, and now hasn't quite worked. The slight rotation, more rotation, I think he's struggling with that. And Klopp is the opposite. Yes, you always lose something, and when it doesn't go right, remember the Everton game, people are saying, why did he rest these guys? But he will say, why are they here now? Exactly. Because I rested them back in November, whatever it was. So I think modern football, it's impossible to play with 10, 12
You're right.
players.
It comes down to the system and making people used to the system, so as when they come in, they're totally relaxed and comfortable exactly what they're doing. I think that's what Liverpool are doing right now. They're totally relaxed. They know what they're doing.
And former Liverpool manager Rafa Benitez brings his Newcastle side to Anfield this weekend, and he's been reflecting on his memories of Anfield.
We won so many things there in the time that I was around that. We were enjoying every minute. So I think always, if you compare our fans, their fans, very similar. So my family is still there, so I go, and then I have a lot of friends. And even when you go away to play against Bournemouth, for example, then you have some fans, and then a lot of them they are Liverpool fans. So then I think it's obviously the connection is there. I was 6 years there. We won 4 trophies, 3 finals, a semi-final of the Europa League. So too many things at this time. So hopefully, if I can do similar things here, the connection will be very similar too. But at the moment it's fine because the fans, they appreciate the work that we are doing here, and the fans, they appreciate the work that we were doing there.
And as much as Rafael Benitez had a connection with Liverpool, the club and the city, he seems to be embracing life in Newcastle in exactly the same way. Geordie's notoriously hardy in the cold weather, and there is Rafa Benitez outside in the snow in a blizzard in shorts. That's almost Tony Pulis-esque.
It doesn't look like a natural. I don't know. Just not 100% convinced.
But it's one of those things that the Newcastle fans will absolutely love about him, and it's one of the things he's very good at as a manager, which is identifying with what the club's core support feels and making sure that he's the man who they can identify with. As far as the results are going, they're going to be identifying and be very happy with those as well. Just one defeat in the last 8. They're only in 15th. They're only 2 points clear of the bottom 3. How frustrating must that be to get a decent run of results and still not be able to claw your way back further up the table?
It's the goals you need at the other end. When you look at Rafa's teams and you look at Newcastle, yes, they can be very sturdy and very stout at the back. But it's the other end. It's the goals, the creating of goals and scoring goals. I thought this was brilliant for them. But they have to they have to win this game. You go 2-0 up, and this is what's very surprising about them, is that they've gone 2-0 up, and then they allow Bournemouth, because they're away from home, to come back. And you'd feel that even if they were at St James's Park, even if you see that miss for me, that finishes it. Gives Bournemouth a chance to get back in, and Bournemouth at the Vitality are going to try and get themselves back in it. That was a very good goal, but then you think to yourself, for Newcastle and where they are, the fact that they don't concede too many goals, You know what I mean? They defend very, very well. Those are the kind of results that, if you look back on it, and Newcastle do go, that's one of the things that you'll have to say is cost them.
And if you took a straw poll of people and asked them to kind of give adjectives to describe Rafael Benitez, probably defensive would be quite high up, and yet they're dropping more points from winning positions than pretty much everyone else.
That's nerves, I think.
Really?
I think that nerves have got to play a part simply because when you get into a situation like they did, and then even when Shelby missed that chance, I guarantee you the rest of the team will have felt, oh gosh, we needed that. And when you feel like you need that 2-0, and you've created a chance where you could have made it 3-0, then they start to get back in the game, the nerves take over. And that is what happens. Then you concede one goal, and then you get the other one, and then in the end you're hanging on. And this is what was very surprising for me with Newcastle. And I still feel that they've got a really good chance of going down still.
You feel like they've got a really good chance of going down, but Jamal Lascelles has been talking this week about their chances of surviving in the Premier League. If they are to survive, how key is he to their chances of survival? Not just because of how he plays, but because of what he gives to that team in terms of leadership and personality and all those intangible qualities.
You answered the question already, because when you think of Newcastle, you think of him.
Yeah.
That's the guy I have in my mind. He sets kind of the standard. He leads by example. Yeah. He is the presence at the back. He looks like the one player that I think half the Premier League would say, that's the one I'm going to take from Newcastle.
Yeah.
And he has something a little bit special about him. And I think fans really react to him. I think the teammates react to him because he is such a consummate professional and just does the right thing all the time. What I would say, the only thing is that in that particular game, at the end, they just looked very tired. You said it was nerves, but they just looked, I think they weren't switched on.
Yeah.
And, your legs get heavy and then your mind kind of just follows. And that is a bit of a worry because that really shouldn't happen.
No.
And you wonder why that is really, if it was just a one-off or if they're just getting a bit tired now at this stage of the season. I mean, one thing that Rafa wanted was more players. More players up front. He was a bit unhappy, and maybe that is coming now to hurt them a little bit.
He's going to say, I told you so. I told you I needed more players.
Which is, kind of double-edged sword, really, for a manager, isn't it? You want to be able to prove yourself right, but at the same time, you'd rather have had the players that would have kept you in the